and welcome to this week's Biz Buzz video segment from the Blank Page to Bestseller podcast. I am your host, Peter Wheatmartian, and on this week's Biz Buzz segment, we discuss everything you need to put on the back cover of your book. First of all, there are two different categories for books. There's nonfiction and there's fiction, and each of these categories has their own unique cover options. But the one thing that is common between both nonfiction and fiction books is that the back cover of your book is a marketing opportunity, and it is a crucial part in turning potential readers into buyers and readers of your book and your future books. There are three main areas that are found on back covers of books. The nonfiction and the fiction books both have three unique sections that you can find on the back of the book. But there is one section that is ubiquitous between all books, whether it be nonfiction, fiction, whether it be novel, novella, short story, whatever that may be. So we talk about all of those different sections that you can find on the back cover of your book. For this week's discussion, I am the moderator, and Colleen is going to talk about all of the back cover options for non-fiction books. Then KZ, our resident fiction expert, is going to share all of the options that writers can use for the back cover of their fiction book. If you are interested in learning more about writing and publishing, all of these weekly Biz Buzz segments are going to be here on YouTube. So please be sure to like this video and subscribe to the Author's Voice YouTube channel here so that you can get more advice on writing, on publishing, on marketing your book, and really making yourself an author that is able to promote themselves. So this is a great way for you to learn a little bit about everything in the publishing industry. If you have questions about anything you find here on the Biz Buzz segments or in publishing in general, please be sure to leave us a comment down in the video, because if you have a great question that you need to ask, we'd love to answer it first of all, but you might actually find that question on a future Biz Buzz segment. So please be sure to let us know if you have any questions down in the comments below. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to myself to introduce the Biz Buzz segment on back covers. And welcome to this week's Biz Buzz segment on the Blank Page to Bestseller podcast. On this week's segment, I am going to serve as moderator between Colleen and KZ, because the two of them are going to look at some of the similarities and differences that a back cover might provide. So on the back cover of a book, you can find a lot of different parts, different things that you might come across on a back cover. Colleen is going to share a little bit about the nonfiction world, what back covers include in nonfiction, and KZ, our resident fiction expert, is going to speak in defense of the fiction back cover. So before before we really dive into the specifics of back covers, I think we talked about this together when we were going over our preview before the show, and what we really boiled it down to is back covers of books are really meant to help writers sell more books. Is that correct? Between
I,
KZ, Colleen, yeah?
yes, I believe we are both nodding our heads on this one, Peter.
Yes, yes.
Okay,
That's the
go ahead.
first thing when really we learned. What was it? That people pick up, oh, that's the cover. But people can decide in 15, 30 seconds when they're reading the back of your book whether or not they want to buy it. Do you agree with that, Candy?
100%. Yes, you have to hit it fast and hard. and they'll just go right on to the next one if they don't see it right away.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so important. I think that is it maybe an interesting kind of side topic to this is with the rise in ebooks, we don't necessarily always see back covers. So this isn't necessarily a lost art. I don't want to say that, but I think it's a part of the publishing world that a lot of people kind of maybe I don't want to say they forget how to do or they don't put the right attention into it, but they can kind of it kind of comes up at last minute and kind of think, oh gosh, I do have to put a lot of things on the back cover of my book. So first of all, let me turn over to Colleen. Can you say maybe in your own words, what do you think is the most important part of a back cover for a nonfiction book?
Well, I would say the description, um, because people are going to read that description and decide if that is for them or not. Did you want me to go into any more further detail now, or you want to wait till Candy says what she says?
Yeah, let me ask Candy her perspective on the most important part of the back cover for fiction.
For fiction, keep in mind that on fiction they've looked at a front cover that is probably very descriptive, very very pointed. For instance, in romance, you know what you're going to get. You know that what you're turning the cover over to look at is going to be something about romance. So yes, the description is very important, but I think that for the back cover, what's more important than the actual description are the headlines. The headlines that are going to draw them into the description.
Mm, That's yeah, that's something that I never really thought of. That's really kind of eye-opening to me. So let me kind of marry these two ideas together. I think it was earlier in the month we talked about kind of what a book blurb is. But between the two of you, I'm going to ask both of you. So is Colleen, we've kind of talked about the book blurb being a little bit different than the description. And KZ, you mentioned having the headlines be really important on the back cover of the fiction books. So
Let
that
me
kind
jump in.
of
Let me jump
y-
into this one first, Peter, if you don't
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
Um, because in romance, or not romance, in fiction, one of the things that is really unusual or different between fiction and nonfiction is that the description often is the blurb. Okay,
Hmm.
so when we're talking about a fiction book, there's not a lot to say about the book except to get people interested in opening the cover.
Hmm.
On a nonfiction book, Colleen doesn't have to worry about the blurb.
Hmm.
It's a different way of looking at the book, and the reader who is picking it up has a different expectation. And I think that's probably the direction we need to go in that.
Hmm. So what would you say the expectation is for readers of fiction books?
The expectation for the readers of the fiction books is they're going to be drawn into the story and the characters right away.
Mm,
And that's what they're going to make their decision based on is, do I like these characters? Do I want to know more about how these characters interact? And do I like this world?
mm,
Because even if it's a contemporary book, it still has a world that's or a location that's involved.
That's really important. It's probably a little bit difficult to put all of that into just a couple of sentences. Am I correct?
150 words on a blurb. So yes.
I was
Yep.
just going to say that for the nonfiction, 150 to 200 tops is what you want for your description.
Yeah.
So what kind of expectations do you think readers have of the description for nonfiction books?
Really, the readers are looking for the expertise of the person writing the book. They're more concerned about what they're providing. If it's a self-help book, if it's an education book, whatever type it is, they're looking for the benefits and what the author's expertise is in that area that they're writing about.
Mm. Oh, that's really important. Yeah. So if they are, let's just say, talking about marketing, they want to know the marketing credentials that the author might have, or might want to know what specific parts of the marketing world that the book is diving into. Is that correct?
Right, the benefits, and I actually wrote an example if you want me to go, share what I
Yeah.
wrote.
Go
So I,
ahead.
I I went with a personal trainer because I've always wanted to be a personal trainer. I just never got that far. But say if you're a personal trainer and your book's discussing the benefits of cardiovascular exercise and staying in shape for that, you want to let your readers know that you are a certified professional trainer. And if you have those credentials, where did you get them? Because that's going to coincide with your information in the book, and they're going to know that you are an expert. Or did
Mhm.
you receive a nutrition certification? And are you certified in other courses? Like, did you become a water aerobics instructor or a spinning class instructor? And one certification that's very good, and I've talked to other personal trainers about this, is the National Association of Sports Medicine. You can take those certifications, which are really known throughout the sports personal training atmosphere. And so, putting those certifications in the description of your book is really, really huge because then they know that who you
Mhm.
are. And then I can go into this later too, but for nonfiction books, and I don't know if this is the same for fiction books, but they're saying that create a bullet list of the main points and features of your book and put those on the book back cover, like 3 to 5 at the most. And like they say, odds are better than evens for some reason when you're doing marketing pieces, but use those bullet points and really showcase what it is that your book's going to do for the reader and what they're going to learn from the book and your expertise.
Yeah, that's a great example there for what would be part of a nonfiction back cover. So, KZ, Colleen brought this up. What are your thoughts on bullet points for the back of the book for fiction?
Rarely seen, and I'll tell you why, in my opinion, because in general, the description, would, because it's so brief, is going to be separated by single lines.
Mm,
In many cases, your paragraphs, each line is going to be a paragraph, so there will be an actual line break between thoughts, between characters, between whatever's going on in the back. So it's rare that you're going to see a bullet point because in a fiction book, remember we're talking about drawing them into the action,
mhm.
okay, of the story, and the bullet points are not going to have that same impact. But having brief lines of text that they don't have to read a big block, that will draw them in. But Colleen also mentioned something that I want to that I think was a great point to bring up, and that is on a fiction back cover, you will rarely see the qualifications of the writer. Occasionally
Mm.
you do, but it's not the writer that they're really, even though they're probably picking it up because they hope to be a fan of this book of eventually, but it's not the writer they're there for, it's the story. So it's rare that we see authors' pictures on the back cover, but on a nonfiction cover, I think Colleen will agree, you frequently see an author's picture on the back.
Mhm. Yeah, that's actually that's a great next avenue to take a look at then. So, KZ, what you're saying is you don't normally see authors' pictures on the back of fiction books. And is do you see like a bio of the author or any like what author aspects do you see on the back cover of fiction books, if any?
You rarely see a bio, rarely see a photo. What you do see is will be any kinds of awards the book has earned, or any awards the author has earned. Okay, so if they
Mm,
were a best-selling author, you might see that referenced. Okay, and if the book has earned awards, that will be referenced as well. So it's not so much the author that's being promoted as the book, and that's
mm.
just the difference between them. And I don't know exactly why.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that part of it's you want to, I mean, sell the story and the immersiveness of the story, and a lot of different fiction writers write in different, formats, different genres, and all of that. So I'm sure there's some reason behind that, but that is interesting that it is less focused on the author, considering some of the big name authors really sell books just because of who they are.
Yes, but keep in mind that if you're a best-selling author and someone picks up your book, they probably aren't going to turn around and read the back cover anyway. They're a fan
That
already.
that's true. That's true.
But there's
So
another element. There's another element I'll just bring in quickly because I want Colleen to respond to this as well. And that is that because so many of today's fiction books are being read by in ebook format, I think that fiction has moved away from really focusing on the author for the back covers and focusing strictly on the story.
yeah, that's definitely probably like I mentioned earlier. The rise of ebooks has definitely changed what you see on covers of books, and
Yeah.
that's probably one of the better examples of what has changed. So Colleen, for the back of nonfiction books, what type of author material do you normally see?
With the author bio is really important for nonfiction books because it's again showing their expertise, their years of experience. Um, if they've achieved any awards or achievements in their professional life, that can be uh, give them more information. But if that's in the description, you don't want to duplicate it because your space is so limited for both. Your contact information, if you want people to contact you, or that may be in the last part of your book, in the interior of the book. um, I think it's important for them to have a professional image of the author so people can put a face to the book, put a face to the professional. And if they're previously published professional previously published book.
Spit it out, Colleen. Spit it out.
uh, that's important, but again, it needs to be brief. They're talking, maybe 3 sentences at the most, about 75 words or so. Again, you don't want, because you'll have that in the interior of your book also, but that will grab the people showing the expertise that you have.
Mhm. Well, that's really important. So we've talked about the description slash book blurb. We've talked about the author material that you might find. Another thing that I've seen on back covers of books, and I want to hear your two opinions on, is some sort of either editorial review or some sort of just praise for the book, if you will. So let me start with Colleen this time. So, do you normally see that on nonfiction books?
Yes, you do. And I forgot to mention that. Of course, yeah, that's really good. When you have an editorial review from an expert or someone that knows you, knows the detail of the book, that type of thing, it's important to put, if you don't have room for the entire one, pick out the most important or uh, catchy phrase that editorial reviewer has put in there, and quote that and quote the name of the person, because that's going to show that people have been interested in your book and they know what it's about.
Yeah, I think this is where you'll start to see the like, someone from the New York Times read this book and reviewed it, or someone from whatever, maybe like medical journal or something like that would review it, and that's where you would see those for nonfiction books, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. KZ, reviews on the back of fiction books or no?
Not very often, although I do see it occasionally. I'm more likely to see it for a book that really hit like number one big.
Mm,
Okay. But if your book is simply, and not nothing wrong with your book if it's not number one big, New York Times bestseller for 30 weeks or something like that, that sort of review is going to get out, is likely to be there. Or if a review is just so on point that it just is just too good not to use, then that would be there as a simple quote on the back cover. But it's rare
mm,
that quotes and reviews are used on the back cover for fiction. Not that they can't be used. I mean, no reason
mhm,
not to. They just simply aren't. More likely to see if there are really great reviews and it's important to that particular author or that particular book series that is being put out. More likely to see a few of those on one page in the front of the book.
mhm,
And not generally at the back of the book. At that point, I think people are the thinking is that the reader's already made up their own mind. They don't need that extra push. But I see a fair number of fiction authors who put a maybe 3 to 5 short reviews on the first page, one of the first pages of the book, because it will show up in the read more section,
Mhm.
the preview, when you're looking at it, say on Amazon or Goodreads, something like that. So I think it's interesting because I believe it's just as important to a fiction writer as it is to a nonfiction writer, but the fiction writers do not generally follow through with that thinking.
Mhm. So, you mentioned how you might want to put a review on the back if it maybe reached bestseller or something big like that. So, would you say that maybe for like a second run of the book or an alternate cover or something, that's when you might see it, but not normally out on first release?
Yeah, and keep in mind the first release it probably came out in ebook. So what you see on the back cover of the paperback or on the dust jacket of the hardback is more likely to be a not a first release, but after a while.
Mm.
Okay, you don't always have those reviews until you've been out for a while. So it's I think that also is one of the reasons why it's not as prevalent in fiction. It's just there's so many other things that authors want to promote that it's not the reviews that they go with.
Mm. That's really great information. So again, we've covered blurbs, we've covered author topics, we've covered reviews. One thing that I think is definitely important, just because we don't always think about it, because I think it's so commonplace on the back of the book. But if you're having a print copy of the book, probably the one thing that most authors don't think of right away is the barcode. So, Colleen, KZ, I'm sure both copies of the books have barcodes, but what are your thoughts on what is needed for the barcode?
Well, that's a good information, Peter, and I was not thinking about that stuff when I was looking at this. But the ISBN number and the price of the book is really important for the barcode. And you have that because if you want to get into a store, the library, well, the library, you wouldn't purchase the book, but if you want your book to be sold in stores besides online, you want to have the price in the barcode so it's people know how much the book's going to be, and the ISBN, which is the author's important part, knowing that that's that author's
Mhm.
publisher's information.
Yeah, KZ, I'm sure same goes for fiction.
It is the same does go for fiction, and most fiction writers allow the barcode to be added by the by the printer.
Right,
Okay,
right.
and the printer will generally include the ISBN always. Okay,
Hmm.
and it will also include, if it has it, the price.
Hmm.
So, for example, if you change your price later on online and your barcode may not be updated,
Hmm.
something to be aware of. So, something that if you, as an author, think your price through initially, so it's there on the paperback or the hardback.
Yeah, I know what I was just kind of thinking is as I was working through the back end of Ingram Spark a couple days ago, one of the options you can check is to include the price with the barcode. So that's kind of what made me think of that.
Yeah, it's a good one. We don't, and of course, placement of the barcode, we're stuck with that.
Hmm.
We don't have any choice when we're creating the back cover. The back barcode's going to be there, and we have to leave space for it.
Hmm.
Maybe I should update my education on that. I always thought that for a nonfiction book anyway, or maybe not just nonfiction, I always thought that the price needed to be on there if it was going to be in a bookstore. And maybe I'm incorrect there.
No, you're not incorrect. The price should be in there, but I think the difference is Ingram gives you the option of choosing
Hmm.
to put it in or not, and Amazon, for instance, doesn't give you the option; they include it.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay. Great.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot of the back cover features. Is there anything between nonfiction back covers that we haven't covered, Colleen?
Well, I did mention this, but I forgot to put professional in front of it. When you have your picture of your author, of yourself as the author, you want to make sure it's a professional picture and you don't want to just take it from your camera and crop it up for your face or whatever. So take that extra little cash that you have and make that a professional picture.
Casey, same
100%.
question. Oh, go ahead. No.
No. Is there anything else I just to pick up on um, what Colleen said? I totally agree on the professional photo. If you're going to use one, make it professional and include the photo in the back of your book, even though it's going to be black and white. Include it in the back of the book. So it's important. As far as, is there anything we've missed? No, I think that there is one thing I'll mention on fiction. In many cases, a fiction cover is going to be very bold and bright and brilliant and colorful and very important to the book. You will most often see that scenario, whatever the cover is, extended to the back. So that's something that you see, and you don't always see that in nonfiction. In nonfiction, they tend to just go with something kind of generic, I think, in the back on the back cover, as far as the just staying with the color theme or whatever the front cover was. But you often see the whole scene laid out in a fiction book in a way that you don't see it in a nonfiction book.
Yeah, that's a great design thought right there. So the only other thing that I had on back covers is I guess we haven't really covered this at all today, so I do want to point this out. We're talking about back covers, but there are two different types of back covers, and KZ, you mentioned it earlier. There's the paperback cover, and then there's also dust jackets. The one thing that I want to point out is there's not necessarily anything steadfast that you have to do or placement of them. If you have a paperback, put everything, you can only put things on the paperback. If you have a dust jacket, you can sometimes put things on the flaps of those dust jackets. Be aware that you probably want to put the description, if it's a nonfiction book, for example, on the back cover, not in the dust jacket, but you do have a little bit extra space with those dust jackets to play around with what you can or can't add to the cover.
Oh, absolutely. Dust jackets are great if you're doing if your book is going out in a hardback. The dust jacket gives you the opportunity to put in all of those quotes that you didn't have room for, or to add additional clarification of who the author is and what the author's done. But you're right, Peter. The description doesn't belong on the dust jacket. However, I've seen excerpts from the book itself on the dust jacket, and I've also seen bullet lists of contents on the dust jacket. So a lot of variety you can do there. I also think, and Colleen may have an opinion on this, I also think that whatever you put on the back of the dust jacket should be the same thing that's on the book. And the dust jacket should be extra.
I agree with that. Yes. On the back cover of the book, you're saying the back part of the dust jacket.
Yes. Yeah. I misspoke. The flaps of the dust jacket, whatever you put on there, should be extra.
Yes. Yes, I agree.
So between nonfiction and fiction, I think we have kind of figured out that there's a lot of similarities, but also a lot of differences in what is included on back covers of books. There's descriptions versus blurbs, which are kind of similar but yet different, which we talked about in a previous episode. The amount of author information can vary depending on if you're a nonfiction or a fiction writer. And then also the amount or the type of reviews can vary depending on if it's a nonfiction or a fiction book. Between what we've talked about today, Colleen, KZ, is there anything that you think we have missed?
I don't think so. But one thing, I just want to do a breakdown, like we talked about for the back cover of the nonfiction, a few points. Your description, what are the benefits, why your book, your author bio, professional picture, and then the barcode.
Yep, absolutely. And I think we've covered it very well, Peter. I really do. I will say that to me, the main difference between the fiction and the nonfiction back cover is The expectation of the reader, what the reader is looking for when they are reviewing when they are considering the purchase of the book.
Mhm. That's important. So, Colleen gave her little bullet points of what she includes on nonfiction. What would you put those bullet points for fiction books?
A strong headline, strong tagline, get the author's name in there nice and big, and give as much drama as you can in the blurb of the description. Entice the reader as much as possible to want to know more. That's what you're putting on the back cover.
I think that right there probably sums up what back covers are, enticing the reader to learn more about the book and open the book and buy the book and read the book. So that's probably what the most important part of back covers specifically, but really cover design in general, is just to get the reader to pick up the book for one, and two, to open up the book so that they're drawn in.
Agreed.
So, without having anything else to add, I think we are at the point now where we can wrap up for the Biz Buzz this week. So, thank you both for talking about the different cover options for nonfiction versus fiction. And I think we've learned a lot. I know we've probably clarified a few things for all of us, even. So, without further ado, then, I think what I'll say is it was great to have you on, and we'll be back next week with another Biz Buzz segment.